Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're taking a deep dive into, well, the incredible life of Louis Zamperini.
Yeah,
Laura Hillenbrand's biography, Unbroken, really does an incredible job of painting such a vivid picture of this guy. Olympian, POW, and ultimately a symbol of resilience. It's packed with these really personal anecdotes and details that make his story come to life.
amazing.
Yeah, today we'll try to navigate all the twists and turns of his journey from his kind of mischievous youth
Yeah,
to his Olympic glory and then into the heart of World War II.
yeah. A story that definitely challenges our understanding of human
Yeah,
endurance.
totally.
And what's interesting is how Louis' early life in Torrance, California, kind of seems to lay the groundwork for his strength later on. He was a real troublemaker, always stealing, fighting.
A tough kid.
Yeah, Hillenbrand even describes him as a one-boy insurgency. A stark contrast to his brother Pete, who was like the epitome of a golden child.
Yeah, it's almost as if his childhood was like a crash course in resilience.
Mm.
But it does make you wonder, how did this kind of rebellious streak transform into that unwavering fortitude he had later in life?
Right. It's fascinating. There's a lot of studies on resilience that show that these challenging upbringings, while difficult, can foster mental toughness. It's almost like a muscle that gets stronger with each obstacle you overcome.
Like anything else, you have to train for it.
Right. So in Louis' case, all those constant scrapes and battles he got into might have actually equipped him with the mental tools he needed to face these much greater trials later.
Wow. It's fascinating how, early experiences can shape us in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaping, it was actually his brother Pete, the rule follower, the more disciplined one,
Right.
who recognized his potential and became his track mentor.
Right. He was a good brother.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that the one who embodied discipline ended up guiding, the rebel.
I know, right? And that speaks to Pete's ability to see beyond the surface, to recognize that raw talent hidden beneath Louis' kind of, rough exterior.
Yeah.
And to think, Louis' journey on the track, like his whole track and field career, began with a simple nudge from some persistent ninth grade girls.
Really?
Yeah, they thought he could help them win an interclass meet.
Wow. So from a reluctant participant to an Olympic athlete.
Exactly.
That's quite a leap. I bet those ninth grade girls had no idea what they were starting.
No idea. They were witnessing the birth of a legend.
Totally.
And his progress was remarkable. I mean, just 5 years after that first, kind of less than impressive race,
Sure.
Louis qualified for the 1936 Berlin Olympics
Wow.
at the age of 19.
19. He was born to run, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I read about his, pretty rigorous training regimen. He even asked his parents not to watch him race because he was embarrassed by the attention. Imagine that focus and determination at 19.
Unbelievable.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, and it paid off.
He did.
I mean, he became a national sensation. He earned the nickname the Torrance Tornado.
Yeah.
And some newspapers even went so far as to insure his legs for like $50,000.
$50,000. There's a lot of pressure to put on a kid.
I know.
Speaking of his Olympic run, his pre-race rituals,
Yeah.
I read about, his meal choices the night before his Olympic race. 5 rolls, 3 helpings of ice cream, 1.5 pounds of cherries. What's going on there?
Well, he needed the fuel.
Yeah.
And, he did almost break the world record of the 1939 NCAA mile race,
Right.
finishing with a time of 4.08.3, a record that stood for 15 years,
Yeah.
from stealing peaches to sharing the Olympic stage with legends like Jesse Owens.
Yeah, truly incredible.
It's a testament to his drive.
For sure. But Louis' Olympic glory was soon overshadowed by the gathering storm of World War II.
Right.
He traded his track shoes for a bombardier's jacket, and he found himself on a B-24 Liberator bomber, nicknamed Superman. But, these planes also had this rather ominous nickname,
Yeah.
Flying Coffins.
Yeah. I mean, what made them so dangerous was they were notorious for mechanical issues.
Really?
And, accidents were common.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. They were really difficult to fly, and their design made them vulnerable to enemy fire.
Wow.
Hillenbrand actually mentions a letter Louis received from a friend describing a really horrific training accident. Just goes to show the constant risks these men faced.
Even in training.
Exactly.
Wow. It's a stark reminder that even in training, the danger was very real.
Yeah.
But despite those risks, Louis and his crew really seemed to embrace their, their downtime in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
They, indulged in those legendary steak dinners.
At the house of P.Y. Chong.
Yeah, exactly. And even tried their hand at surfing.
Right. They actually fashioned these surfboards out of inflated mattress covers.
Really?
Yeah, almost drowning in the process.
Wow.
But, under that kind of carefree facade, they were really yearning for action.
Yeah.
While the fighting was going on in places like Wakanero, they felt sidelined, like they were itching to, contribute.
Right. And then came that fateful rescue mission aboard the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
It's actually really unsettling that Louis almost didn't board that flight. He left a note on his footlocker offering his stash of booze to his buddies if he didn't return.
Oh, wow.
It's almost as if he had some kind of premonition.
Yeah. And it actually might be that the engineer sacrificed himself to deploy the raft during the crash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a grim thought. But it might be the reason Louis, the pilot Phil, and the tailgunner Mac even had a chance at survival.
Yeah. 47 days adrift on a raft, facing the sun, thirst, and the ever-present threat of sharks.
I know. It's crazy to think they surpassed the known survival record for being adrift on an inflated raft.
And their situation was definitely dire. But it sounds like their spirits didn't break. Remember Louis' attempt to catch an albatross for food?
Oh, yeah.
Phil was superstitious. He objected. But Louis, being the pragmatist, he was just willing to do whatever it took.
Exactly.
And then came that terrifying attack by a Japanese bomber. Louis had to dive into, shark-infested waters to avoid being strafed. I mean, that must have been pure terror.
Yeah. But that attack actually ended up being kind of a mixed blessing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They used wreckage from another raft to create a makeshift canopy for protection from the sun.
Oh, clever.
Yeah. And plus, the encounter gave them some clues about their location based on the, bomber's flight path.
Finding opportunity amidst adversity. It seems like that's a recurring theme in his story.
Yeah, for sure.
But even with those small victories, their condition continued to deteriorate.
Yeah,
Phil was battling dysentery. They were having hallucinations, and their hope, just dwindled with each passing day. Yeah.
And then, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, they were captured by the Japanese.
No.
That marked a new chapter of hardship.
Totally. From the vastness of the open ocean to the confines of a Japanese POW camp,
Right.
their journey took a really dramatic turn.
Yeah.
And what awaited them was, it was a whole different kind of challenge.
Right.
One that was specifically designed to break their spirits.
Can't imagine.
And really test their endurance. Their first stop, Kwajalein, an island with a pretty ominous nickname, Execution Island.
Wow.
It was there that the real psychological impact of captivity really set in for these guys.
Yeah, it's just chilling to read about that native worker, casually informing Louis that all the Marines there had been executed. Like even making that slashing motion across his throat.
It's hard to imagine the weight of that moment.
Totally.
And that, that casual cruelty, that was a tactic.
Oh, it was meant to instill fear. Just to chip away at any hope the prisoners might have.
Wow.
And that psychological torment was, obviously made even worse by the physical abuse. Forced dancing, beatings, taunting, you name it. It was a very systematic attempt to just dehumanize them and break their spirits.
It makes you wonder about the limits of human endurance. How much strength does it really take to hold on to your sanity in the face of that kind of relentless cruelty?
It's a good question. And they did find ways to resist. Small acts of defiance, little things to keep their spirits from being totally crushed. Stealing newspapers to follow the war, for example.
So they could have some idea of, what was going on.
Exactly. They clung to any glimmer of hope.
Sure.
And then came Ofuna. And, one of the most infamous figures in Louis' story. Matsuro Watanabe, known as the Bird.
I've heard of him.
His cruelty was just, it seems like he was in a league of its own. Watanabe was obsessed with control, with humiliating people, and he fixated on Louis. It was like he saw Louis' unbreakable spirit as this personal challenge.
He had to break him.
Exactly. Like there's this one account of him making Louis hold this heavy wooden beam over his head for hours. And when Louis finally collapses, Watanabe just laughs and kicks him.
Oh, my God.
It's just, I mean, how do you comprehend that level of, sadism?
Yeah, yeah.
He even burned letters from Louis's family,
Uh-huh.
like right in front of him, just to cause him pain. It wasn't just physical abuse. It was a calculated psychological attack meant to strip Louis of his dignity.
I mean, how do you even come back from something like that?
Louis somehow always found a way to resist.
He did.
There was one time he was forced to do this propaganda broadcast for Radio Tokyo,
Oh, wow.
and he actually used it as a chance to reassure his family he was alive.
Really?
He slipped in all these little coded messages, like mentioning other POWs by name, so their families would know they were still out there.
Mm.
I mean, turning the enemy's own platform against them is pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes about his spirit, but as the war dragged on, anxieties at the camps, they just kept escalating.
Right.
There were all these rumors of a kill-all order if Japan lost the war.
That was been terrifying.
I can only imagine.
The kill-all order refers to this, widespread fear that the Japanese would execute all POWs if they were defeated.
Gosh.
It was a chilling possibility.
Yeah.
And then came Omori, a camp that was just like a whole new level of hell. The forced labor, the food was awful, and of course, the bird.
Oh, he was still around.
Oh, yeah. His reign of terror continued.
Wow.
These guys, they were essentially slaves, working themselves to the bone in shipyards, factories, risking everything to get extra calories, like stuffing socks with stolen sugar.
Just to survive.
Exactly. And the bird's cruelty, it was relentless. There's this story about him forcing Louis to punch another prisoner, just over and over.
No.
Until the guy's face was just, it was awful. How do you even process that? The psychological toll.
I can't imagine.
And then, just when you think it can't get worse, Louis is transferred to Naiotsu, one of the most brutal camps in all of Japan.
Oh, wow.
The conditions were horrific. They were forced to work in this freezing steel mill, shoveling coal and salt for hours. Guys were literally dying from exhaustion and starvation.
Unbelievable. And the bird?
Oh, the bird followed him.
Of course.
There's even a story about him forcing Louis to clean the pigsty with his bare hands.
Oh.
Just degrading. Cruel.
But even then, Louis found a way to resist, right?
He did.
Didn't he hide rice in his pajamas to share?
Yeah, to share with the others.
It's amazing. Even in the darkest of times, that spark, that determination, it never left him.
And then, August 6, 1945, everything changed.
The bombing of Hiroshima.
Yeah. It must have been a confusing moment for the POWs at Naiotsu. They could sense a shift, but they were still terrified of that kill-all order.
Right.
The surrender announcement, it was a relief, but it was also uncertain.
Yeah.
The Japanese commander in Naiotsu actually tried to recruit the POWs to fight the Soviets.
Really?
It's bizarre, but it just shows you the chaos of those last few days.
Oh, I can imagine. But finally, after, over 2 years?
More than 2?
Liberation came?
Louis was free, but his journey, it was far from over.
Right.
The scars, they ran deep.
Yeah. He came home a hero, but he was battling nightmares, struggling with alcoholism, dealing with the psychological wounds of captivity.
He actually said he felt like a dead body breathing.
Gosh, it's a stark contrast to Phil's experience, Phil the pilot.
Yeah.
He returned to his fiancée, built this seemingly normal, peaceful life.
Right.
It just highlights the fact that trauma, it affects everyone so differently.
Exactly. There's no right way to cope.
Right. And then there's the question of justice. The war crimes trial started, and the fates of the Japanese guards, guys like Watanabe, were being decided.
Yeah. Some were hanged, others imprisoned. But Watanabe, he just vanished. Most people think he killed himself.
And so he never really faced any accountability for his actions. His cruelty, it left scars on so many lives. And, it's disturbing to think he resurfaced again in 1956.
He did.
Yeah, he gave an interview to a Japanese magazine and actually defended his actions during the war.
Oh, wow. Defended them.
Yeah, he said he was just following orders.
Oh, my gosh.
That his harsh methods were necessary to, maintain discipline among the prisoners. He even said he was disappointed the Americans had released him.
Wow. The lack of remorse is just, it's chilling.
It's hard to believe. It makes you think about the complexities of war.
Yeah.
How it distorts things.
Yeah.
Makes you question how people cope. Both the victims and the perpetrators.
For sure. And then there's Jimmy Sasaki.
Oh, right.
Louis' friend from USC, who, turned out to be a Japanese spy.
Yeah.
Remember how Louis mentioned those encounters with friends in the camps?
Uh-huh.
Well, one of those friends, a guy named Bill Harris, was actually held at Ofuna at the same time as Sasaki.
Wow, so Sasaki, I mean, the guy who betrayed his country and his friend, he was working in the very camps where, where his former classmates were being held prisoner.
He was an interpreter for the Japanese interrogators.
Oh, gosh.
And according to Harris, he witnessed some of the worst abuses, including this one brutal beating that left Harris with permanent brain damage.
Oh, my
It just
goodness.
adds another layer to this whole story. The friend turned enemy. The witness who did nothing to stop the torture.
It's a lot to unpack.
And after the war, Sasaki was captured. He was actually put on trial for war crimes.
How was? What happened?
Well, there was a lot of conflicting testimony.
Oh, okay.
And some people argued he was just, following orders,
Yeah.
like a emprin.
Right.
But in the end, they did convict him.
They did.
Yeah, he was sentenced to 6 years of hard labor.
Mm-hmm.
But, the details of what he did, how much he was really involved, it's still kind of murky.
Right.
It's kind of a fitting end for a story in so many gray areas.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
characters who aren't just good or bad.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the uncomfortable realities of war.
Absolutely. And the human capacity for both good and evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even with all that darkness, there is this message of hope in Louis' story.
Yeah.
His belief in the human spirit,
This
his
passion.
forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that really stay with you.
For sure. His story is a testament to that resilience,
Mm.
our ability to endure and come out on the other side, not unscathed,
Yeah.
but ultimately triumphant. A reminder that even in the face of that much suffering, we can still choose forgiveness, to embrace life and find meaning.
Powerful stuff.
It's a deep dive that stays with you. And that's the power of Louis' story. It challenges us, inspires us, and, ultimately reminds us of that indomitable spirit within each of us. So we left off with some pretty big questions about the fates of Watanabe and Sasaki. Let's start with Watanabe. It's hard to believe that someone who inflicted so much pain could just vanish.
Well, right after the war, the Japanese police, they launched a huge manhunt. For 2 years, they were chasing down every lead, keeping tabs on his mom, Shizuka, following her, searching her mail, even interrogating, friends and family.
So they were really trying to bring him to justice.
Oh, yeah. They wanted him bad.
And did they ever find him?
They almost did.
Really?
In 1948, there was this story in a Japanese magazine that claimed Watanabe was dead. Maybe suicide, they said. But the police, they thought it was a trick.
A trick.
Like to draw him out of hiding. So they, ramped up the surveillance on Shizuka just in case he tried to contact her.
Wow, so it was the real game of cat and mouse.
Totally. And Watanabe, or maybe his family trying to protect him, they won. He didn't take the bait.
He just stayed hidden.
Yeah. Later that year, Shizuka actually saw him again.
Yeah.
It was this secret meeting in a Tokyo restaurant. At least that's what the family says.
That's a bold move for a guy who was, one of the most wanted men in Japan.
He was desperate, I guess, needed to know how close the police were. But after that meeting, poof, gone. He disappeared completely, new identity, new life as a traveling salesman, basically vanished into thin air.
Wow. So he really did escape any accountability. His cruelty, it left so many scars.
Yeah. And it's even more disturbing that he popped up again in 1956.
Yeah.
Gave an interview to a Japanese magazine and, get this, actually defended what he did during the war.
Defended it. I don't even understand that.
Yeah, said he was just following orders,
Yeah.
that his methods were necessary, even said he was disappointed that the Americans had let him go.
It's hard to wrap your head around that. The lack of remorse, it's really something.
Yeah, for sure.
It really makes you think about the nature of war, how it can twist people's morals.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder about the lasting impact on everyone involved, both the victims and those who inflict the suffering.
No doubt.
Right. And then there's the question of Jimmy Sasaki, Louis' friend from USC, who ended up being a Japanese spy.
Oh, right.
We know Louis mentioned bumping into some friends in the camps during that Radio Tokyo broadcast.
Uh-huh.
Well, another one of those friends, a guy named Bill Harris, was held at Ofuna at the same time as Sasaki.
Wow. So the guy who betrayed Louis, he was working in the same camps where his, former classmates were prisoners.
Yeah, can you imagine?
He was an interpreter for the Japanese interrogators.
Oh, gosh.
And Harris said that Sasaki was there for some of the worst of it. Like this one really awful beating that left Harris with brain damage.
It's hard to grasp the weight of that betrayal, a friend turning into an enemy, watching these things happen and doing nothing to stop it.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So what happened after the war?
Well, Sasaki was caught and put on trial for war crimes.
Oh, wow.
There was a lot of back and forth,
Conflicting stories.
Yeah, some folks said he was just following orders, that kind of thing.
It's the age-old excuse, isn't it?
Right. But he was convicted.
He was.
Yep, 6 years hard labor.
Yeah.
But the details of exactly what he did is still kind of a mystery.
It's fitting, I guess, for a story like this, filled with, these moral gray areas, characters that aren't just good guys or bad guys. It really makes you face the messy realities of war, doesn't it?
It does.
And the fact that we're all capable of both incredible good and terrible things. But even with all that darkness, Louis' story is ultimately one of hope, isn't it?
It is.
That belief in the human spirit, his journey to forgiveness. Those are the things that stick with you.
For sure.
His story is such a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, our ability to endure horrible things and come out, maybe not whole, but stronger. It reminds us that even when things are their worst, we still have that choice to choose forgiveness, to choose life, to find meaning in our shared humanity.
It's a powerful message.
It is, and it's a message that stays with you. Well, deep divers, that's our deep dive into the incredible life of Louis Zamperini. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.